I built my life on control. I am a CEO, powerful, untouchable, and used to commanding every room I enter. Men, especially billionaires, always tried to impress me. I never reacted, I never felt anything, until the day I saw him, a poor single dad, standing there like he didn't belong in my world, yet somehow shaking something inside me I couldn't understand. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, he didn't even try to impress me. But when I looked at him, I felt something I had never felt before. Confusion, disruption, and something dangerously close to emotion. My board told me to ignore him. My world told me he was nothing. But my heart didn't listen. The more I tried to stay away from him, the more I started noticing him. His struggle, his silence, his strength, and worst of all, the way my thoughts kept drifting back to him when I should have been thinking about my empire. I didn't understand what was happening to me, because I don't fall for people like him. But somehow, I already had, and that was the moment I realized I was no longer in control of my own heart. My name is Evelyn Carter, and in my world, emotions are a weakness I cannot afford. I built my empire from nothing. Every deal I closed, every company I crushed, every billionaire who tried to challenge me, I made sure they all learned one thing. I don't lose, I don't get distracted, and I definitely don't fall for anyone. Men around me were predictable, handsome billionaires with expensive suits, powerful CEOs trying to impress me with bigger numbers. They all wanted one thing from me, my attention, but I never gave it. Because attention is dangerous, attachment is worse, and love is a risk I never allowed myself to take, until him. That day started like every other day in my life, a morning board meeting at my headquarters, glass walls, cold air, sharp voices, millions being discussed like it was nothing. My executives were presenting acquisition reports when my phone buzzed. I ignored it, until my assistant leaned forward. "Ma'am, there's an issue in the parking area." I frowned slightly. "What kind of issue?" She hesitated. "A man is arguing with security." I almost dismissed it, until she added something that made me pause. "He's refusing to leave. He says he was called here for a job." I stood up immediately. In my world, delays don't happen, mistakes don't happen, and confusion is unacceptable. I walked down to the parking level, and that's when I saw him. A poor single dad. At least that's what I assumed the moment I looked at him. He stood near an old, slightly damaged pickup truck. His clothes were simple, worn shirt, faded jeans, work boots covered in dust. Nothing about him belonged in my building, but what caught my attention wasn't his appearance. It was his calmness. Security officers were surrounding him, trying to push him back, but he wasn't yelling, he wasn't begging, he was just standing there, holding a small job paper in his hand. "I was called for this repair," he said calmly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, controlled, the kind of voice that doesn't break under pressure. I stepped closer. The security immediately made space for me. Everyone in the parking area went silent, because when I appear, people stop talking. I looked at him properly for the first time. Dark eyes, tired face, a man who had clearly worked too many hours and slept too little, a single father trying to survive life one day at a time, and something about him felt different. "Who are you?" I asked coldly. He met my eyes without hesitation. "Marcus Reed. I was assigned here for vehicle repair work." I glanced at the paper in his hand. It was real. My office had actually called him. But what happened next wasn't supposed to happen, because instead of fear, I felt something else, curiosity, unwanted, dangerous. I looked at my security. "Let him do the job," I said. They hesitated. "Ma'am, he doesn't look." I cut them off. "Let him." They stepped back immediately, and just like that, he walked past them, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. That was the first mistake my heart made. I didn't know it yet, but I was already noticing him. Hours passed. I was back in meetings, trying to ignore the strange discomfort I felt, but every time I tried to focus, my mind drifted back to him, the man fixing a car in my parking area, a man who shouldn't matter, and yet did. Later that afternoon, I decided to go down again, not because I needed to check the repair, but because I told myself I needed to ensure everything was handled properly. That was the lie I used. When I reached the parking area, he was still working, covered in slight grease now, focused completely on the engine. His hands moved with experience, not guesswork, skill, real skill. I stood there for a moment without speaking. He didn't even notice me at first, and strangely, I liked that. Everyone always notices me, but he didn't. When he finally looked up, he paused, just for a second. Not fear, not shock, just awareness. "You're still here," he said calmly. I crossed my arms. I was checking progress. He nodded and returned to his work. No unnecessary words, no attempt to impress, no change in behavior because I was watching. That irritated me and interested me at the same time, because every man I've met tries to become someone else in front of me. But he didn't. He stayed exactly the same. I watched him tighten a bolt carefully, focused, silent, controlled, and for the first time in years, I felt something I couldn't name, a disturbance in my perfect order, a crack in my control. I should have left. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there watching a poor single dad fix a car, while slowly realizing something terrifying. I was no longer just observing him. I was starting to feel him. And that feeling was the beginning of my downfall. I told myself it was nothing, just curiosity. That's what I kept repeating as I stood in the parking area watching him work. A poor single dad shouldn't have taken space in my mind. But Marcus Reed was not behaving like someone ordinary. He didn't fidget under pressure. He didn't try to impress anyone. Even my staff walking past him barely got a reaction. He was focused only on the machine in front of him, like the entire world didn't exist. And for someone like me, that was unusual, because everyone reacts to power. Everyone reacts to status. Everyone reacts to me, except him. That alone irritated me more than I wanted to admit. I walked closer again. My heels clicked against the polished concrete floor. Still, he didn't look up immediately. Only when he finished tightening a bolt did he finally turn. "You again," he said calmly. No respect, no fear, just acknowledgement. That small thing should have annoyed me, but it didn't. Instead, it intrigued me even more. "I don't usually supervise repairs," I said coldly. He nodded. "Then don't." I blinked slightly. Most people would panic after saying that to me, but he just returned to the engine like I wasn't even there. Something inside me shifted again. I stepped closer to the vehicle. "You're confident," I said. He gave a faint shrug. "I just do my job. That's not what I meant." He paused for a moment, then looked at me properly. "For me, confidence isn't a choice," he said. "It's survival." That line stayed in the air longer than it should have. Survival. Something about the way he said it felt real, not like corporate speeches, not like polished billionaires, but like someone who actually lived through it. I watched him wipe grease off his hands. Then he spoke again. "I have a son," he said casually. That surprised me slightly. Most people don't mention family so easily in front of me. "He's 8, he continued. "Smart kid, talks too much like me." For the first time, I saw something different in his expression. Not struggle, not exhaustion, but pride, real pride. And somehow, that changed how I saw him again. Because men like him don't talk about pride. They talk about survival. But he talked about his son like that child was the most important thing in his universe. And I understood something in that moment. He wasn't poor in the way people think. He was rich in something most people in my world didn't have: meaning, a vibration I had never paid attention to before. I cleared my throat. "You're raising him alone?" He nodded. "Yeah." No complaint. No victim story. Just truth. Simple, clean, heavy. I don't know why, but I stayed. I should have left. I had meetings, calls, millions being negotiated upstairs, but I stayed, and that was my second mistake. As he continued working, a staff member walked by and whispered something to another. I caught fragments. Why is she watching him? Just a mechanic. CEO wasting time. I ignored them, but Marcus didn't. He heard it too. Still, he didn't react. Instead, he simply said, "People always talk." I frowned slightly. "And you don't care?" He tightened another bolt. "Careful people don't survive long." That line hit differently, because it wasn't arrogance. It was experience. Real experience. I crossed my arms again. "You speak like someone who's been through a lot." He paused. For the first time, his hands stopped moving. "Everyone has." That was all he said. But something in his tone told me not to ask further, and I didn't. Which was strange, because I always dig deeper, always control conversations. But with him, I didn't. Minutes passed. Then something unexpected happened. A sudden sound from the engine. A sharp malfunction tone. One of my technicians rushed over. "Ma'am, something is wrong with the system." Before he could finish, Marcus had already reached in and adjusted something manually. The sound stopped. Silence. My technician froze. "How did you know that fix?" he asked. Marcus wiped his hands again. "Because I designed systems like this before." That sentence hit the air like a shockwave. My eyes narrowed slightly. "What did you say?" He shrugged. "Just experience." But I didn't miss the pause, the way he avoided explaining, the way he stepped back into silence immediately after. There was something deeper there, something buried. And now I was more curious than ever. I stepped closer. "You designed systems?" He didn't answer immediately, then finally said, "A long time ago." Before I could ask more, his phone rang. He looked at the screen instantly. His expression changed slightly. Not panic, not fear, concern. "Dad?" a small voice said through the phone. His entire posture shifted. His voice softened instantly. "Hey, buddy. Yeah, I'm working. I'll be home soon." That moment, that single moment, changed something inside me again. Because I saw him fully now. Not just a mechanic, not just a stranger, but a father, a real one who bends his entire world around his child. When he ended the call, he became quiet again. But I wasn't, because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel in control of my own attention anymore. I was supposed to leave. I was supposed to go back to my empire. But instead, I stayed there, watching a poor single dad, slowly becoming the only thing I could think about. I should have stopped watching him. That thought repeated in my mind, again and again. But I didn't leave. Instead, I stayed in the parking area, like someone who had forgotten the world waiting above me. Marcus Reed was still working on the vehicle, completely unaware that the most powerful woman in the building was standing a few feet away, watching him like he was the only thing in focus. And that was the dangerous part. Because I don't watch people. People watch me. Yet here I was, breaking my own rule without even realizing it. He tightened the last bolt, stepped back, and finally closed the hood. "Done," he said simply. A technician rushed forward to inspect it. Within seconds, he nodded. "It's perfect." Of course it was. Marcus didn't react to the praise. He just cleaned his hands slowly with a rag, like none of this mattered. I stepped closer again. "You said you designed systems," I repeated. This time, I didn't let it go. He sighed slightly. "I used to." That word again. Used to. I narrowed my eyes. Used to what? He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw it. Something he didn't want to open. But I wasn't someone who accepts surface answers. "I built automation systems for logistics networks," he finally said, "back when I had time for that world." That sentence didn't sound like pride. It sounded like loss, a quiet one, a buried one. Before I could respond, my assistant appeared beside me. "Ma'am, your meeting with the board is starting." I didn't move. "Cancel it," I said immediately. She froze. "Excuse me?" I said, "Cancel it." Even Marcus looked up at that. Finally. Actually looked at me. Not as a CEO, but as a person doing something unusual. My assistant left quickly, confused. Silence returned. Only the sound of distant aircraft and tools in the background. Marcus folded his rag and placed it inside his tool bag. "You shouldn't do that," he said calmly. I raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Cancel meetings for a mechanic." That word again. Mechanic. But this time it didn't feel like an insult. It felt like reality. Still, I didn't like how he said it. "I decide my priorities," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Then you're not as predictable as I thought." Something about that sentence made my chest tighten slightly, because I didn't like being analyzed. I looked at him directly. "And what did you think I was?" He didn't hesitate this time. "Like every CEO I've ever met," he said. "Controlled, busy, surrounded by people but still alone." That last word stayed in the air. Alone. I didn't respond immediately, because he wasn't wrong, but I wasn't going to admit it. Instead, I changed the subject. "You mentioned a son. Aren't you hesem?" His face softened again instantly. "Yes. What's his name?" "Elijah." Even the way he said it changed his tone, like the world had suddenly become less heavy. "How old?" I asked. 8. I nodded slightly. Then I surprised myself by asking another question. "Does he know what you do here?" Marcus smiled faintly. "He thinks I fix the world one broken thing at a time." That sentence hit differently. Not dramatic, not emotional, but honest, and somehow beautiful. I found myself looking away for a second, because I wasn't used to feeling things like that. Not in boardrooms, not in deals, not in my world. Marcus picked up his tools again. "I should go," he said. Something inside me reacted instantly, too quickly. "Wait." He paused, looked at me again. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't even know why I stopped him. But I did, and now I had to justify it. "You didn't finish your paperwork," I said quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "It's done." "No," I replied. "I mean payment." He shook his head. "It's fine. Just send it later." Then he turned slightly to leave. And that's when it happened. My phone buzzed. His phone rang at the same time. We both paused. He answered first. "Hey, buddy." I watched him. The shift again. The softness. The father. The man behind the worker. But then his expression changed. Fast. "Slow down. What happened?" My instincts sharpened instantly. Something was wrong. He turned away slightly. "What do you mean the school called me?" My chest tightened without reason. Then I heard him say it. "I'm coming right now." He ended the call abruptly, looked at me. For the first time, not calm, not controlled, but urgent. "I need to go," he said. "What happened?" I asked immediately. He grabbed his bag. "My son's school. There's an issue." And before I could stop myself, I said something I never say. "I'm coming with you." He frowned slightly. "You don't have to." I said I'm coming. Silence. He studied me for a second, then nodded once. And that was the moment everything shifted again. Because I didn't know it yet, But I wasn't just following a mechanic to a school. I was walking straight into a part of his life that would change everything I thought I knew about him. The car ride to the school was silent, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Marcus drove fast, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel like he was holding back panic. I sat beside him in the passenger seat, something I never thought I would do. A CEO, sitting in an old pickup truck, going to a school emergency with a poor single dad. Life had a strange sense of humor. "Is your son okay?" I finally asked. He didn't look at me. "I don't know yet." That answer made my chest tighten slightly. Marcus wasn't the type to panic, but now he was different. We reached the school within minutes, and the moment we stepped out of the truck, I felt it. Something was wrong. Teachers were standing outside, parents whispering. A small crowd gathered near the entrance. Marcus didn't wait. He walked straight in. I followed. Marcus's son was sitting quietly in the corner. My heart stopped for a second. That was Elijah, the same boy he talked about with so much pride. But now, he looked scared. Marcus rushed to him immediately. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, kneeling down. "What happened?" The boy looked up. "I didn't do anything, Dad." His voice shook. That broke something in Marcus's expression. He stood up immediately. "What happened here?" he asked firmly. The principal stepped forward. There was a misunderstanding, but Marcus cut him off. "No, start from the beginning." Silence filled the room. The teacher hesitated, then spoke. "Another student accused him of breaking equipment in the science lab." Marcus didn't even blink. "That's not true." "How do you know?" the principal asked. Marcus looked down at his son. "Because he trusted him completely." Then he said something simple. "My son doesn't lie." That sentence carried more power than anything I had heard all day. But the situation wasn't resolved yet. The principal crossed her arms. "We need proof." That's when I stepped forward. For the first time, "Show me the lab footage." Everyone turned to me. Some recognized me, some didn't, but Marcus did. "Why are you here?" he whispered. "I told you I was coming," I replied. The principal looked uncomfortable now. "Security footage is being checked." Minutes passed, too slow, too tense. Then a security officer walked in. I found it. Fee played the footage, and everything changed. It showed another student damaging the equipment and blaming Elijah. Silence, heavy silence. The accused student was called in. He admitted it immediately when confronted. The truth was clear. Elijah had done nothing wrong. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Relief, pure relief. Then he turned to his son. "You're okay," he said softly. Elijah nodded. I watched that moment closely because I had seen billionaires break in front of money. I had seen CEOs collapse under pressure. But this was different. This was a father's fear turning into relief, and somehow it affected me more than it should have. The principal apologized. The situation was resolved, but Marcus didn't celebrate. He just held his son's hand. That was all. We walked out of the school together. The crowd outside slowly dispersed. The crisis was over, but something inside me had already changed. I realized I wasn't thinking like a CEO anymore. I wasn't analyzing him. I wasn't evaluating. I was feeling, and that was dangerous. Marcus stopped beside his truck. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked. "For standing there." I shook my head. "You didn't need me." He looked at me. "Yes," he said softly, "I did." That one sentence stayed with me longer than anything else that day, because no one had ever said that to me. Not in business, not in life, not in my world. He put his son in the truck, then turned back to me. "I should take you back." I nodded, but I didn't move immediately. Neither did he. There was a pause, a strange one, heavy but calm. Then I said something I didn't plan. "You're not what I expected." He gave a faint smile. "And what did you expect?" "A mechanic," I admitted. He laughed quietly. "I am." "No," I said softly. "You're more than that." Silence again. Then he looked away slightly, like he didn't believe it, or maybe didn't want to. I got into the passenger seat again. We drove back in silence, but this time it was different, because I realized something I didn't want to accept yet. I wasn't just interested in him because he was different. I was attached, emotionally, dangerously. And as the sun set outside the windshield, I understood the truth I had been avoiding since the beginning. I didn't just meet a poor single dad. I met someone who was slowly breaking every rule I had ever built to protect my heart, and I had no idea how to stop it.